The manila envelope sat on my doorstep like a ticking bomb. No return address, just my name, Riley Emerson, written in precise block letters. I almost walked past it, my mind still churning over the patient I'd lost during my EMT shift. But something about that envelope made me pause. Inside were photos. The kind that make your stomach drop and your world tilt sideways. My fiancé Ethan, looking perfectly at home in some upscale bar I didn't recognize, with his arm around a stunning blonde. Their body language screamed intimacy, the way she leaned into him, how his fingers curled possessively around her waist. The date stamp showed last Friday, when he told me he was pulling an all-nighter at the law library. "You deserve better," read the note tucked behind the photos. The handwriting matched the envelope. I sat on my front steps, the spring breeze suddenly feeling too cold. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Love you." 3 years together, 1 year engaged, and I thought I knew him. We'd met during my first year of medical school when he helped me jumpstart my car in the hospital parking lot. He'd been visiting his mother after her minor surgery, though I'd later learn Meredith Caldwell's hospital stays were more about maintaining her prescription supply than actual medical needs. My hands shook as I dialed my best friend Jenna. "I need you to be honest," I said when she picked up. "Have you heard anything about Ethan seeing someone else?" "Riley? What's wrong? Just. Please. Have you?" The pause before her answer told me everything. There'd been rumors at the hospital. I didn't want to. "Who is she?" "Sweetie, maybe we should talk about this in person." I stared at the photos again, at the way Ethan smiled at this woman, the same smile he'd given me last night over dinner. "I'm coming over." "Wait," Jenna said. "What are you going to do?" The answer came surprisingly easy. "I'm going to that charity gala at his parents' house tonight. The one Meredith's been planning for months. And I'm going to ask him about these photos in front of everyone he knows. Riley, think this through. I have to go. My future mother-in-law is calling." I watched Meredith's name flash across my screen. Probably wants to remind me not to embarrass the family tonight. If she only knew what was coming. Just. "Be careful," Jenna warned. "You know how the Caldwells operate. Nothing is ever what it seems with that family." She had no idea how right she was. The Caldwell mansion always felt like a museum, beautiful, cold, and full of things I wasn't supposed to touch. Tonight, it was worse. The charity gala preparation buzzed around us as Meredith held court at the dining table, directing staff while simultaneously critiquing my choice of medical specialties. "Emergency medicine is so intense," she said, wrinkling her nose. "Wouldn't dermatology be more suitable? The hours are better, and you could still look presentable for social functions." I pushed my untouched salmon around my plate, the photos from this morning burning a hole in my purse. I prefer saving lives to giving Botox injections. Ethan squeezed my knee under the table. A warning. Or comfort. These days, I couldn't tell the difference. Speaking of presentations, Meredith continued, "I've taken the liberty of having Valentino send over a few appropriate options for tonight's gala. The one you mentioned wearing is a bit undergraduate." "My dress is fine," I said, meeting her eyes. "Black tie appropriate, just like the invitation specified." Robert Caldwell looked up from his phone for the first time all evening. "Let her wear what she wants, Meredith. God knows we have bigger problems tonight." Meredith's perfectly manicured hand tightened around her wine glass. "What problems?" "The Richardson Foundation is threatening to pull their donation. Something about irregularities in last quarter's disbursements." The color drained from Meredith's face. "That's impossible. I handled everything personally." "Exactly the problem," Robert muttered, returning to his phone. I watched Meredith's composure crack, just for a second, before she plastered on her society smile. "Ethan, darling, would you help me check on the florist? They've been absolutely useless with the centerpieces." As they left, I pulled out my phone and Googled Richardson Foundation scandal. Nothing came up, but something about Meredith's reaction felt off. I started typing, Caldwell charity fraud, when Robert cleared his throat. Curious girl, aren't you? His tone was light, but his eyes were sharp. Word of advice? Some questions are better left unasked. Especially when you're about to join the family. Is that a threat? Consider it friendly guidance. We all want what's best for Ethan, don't we? Before I could respond, Ethan returned alone. Mom's having one of her moments. Something about the wrong shade of roses. He kissed my cheek. And I caught a whiff of unfamiliar perfume, the same scent that had lingered on his collar in the photos. Everything okay? He asked, noticing my tension. I forced a smile. Perfect. Just perfect. But as I watched Robert typing rapidly on his phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a cheating fiancé. The question was, how deep did I dare dig? I found the proof in the most obvious place, Meredith's home office. While everyone else prepared for the gala downstairs, I'd excused myself to freshen up and slipped into her pristine workspace. The Richardson Foundation files were right there in her desk drawer, along with documentation of donations to shell companies I'd never heard of. My hands shook as I snapped photos with my phone. $3 million, diverted from children's cancer research to offshore accounts. The perfume bottle on Meredith's desk, the same scent I'd smelled on Ethan, suddenly made horrible sense. The blonde in the photos wasn't just some random woman, she was the foundation's financial auditor. Looking for something specific? I spun around. Ethan stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. Want to explain why you're meeting with Sarah Richardson in secret? I countered, holding up my phone with the incriminating photo. His eyes widened. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. You and your mother are running a scam. What I can't figure out is why. Your family has everything. Riley, please. He stepped closer, reaching for my phone. Sarah's helping me build a case. Mom doesn't know, but I've suspected something was wrong for months. The foundation's audit. How convenient. I backed away. And I suppose the way you were holding her was just part of the investigation? That photo's not what it looks like. Neither is this, I'm sure. I pulled up the financial documents on my phone. $3 million, Ethan. From sick kids. His face went pale. It's worse than I thought. What's worse? Meredith's voice cut through the tension like a knife. She stood behind Ethan, perfectly coiffed in her gala dress. Ethan, darling, why are you entertaining Riley's ridiculous accusations? She's clearly unstable. Mom. I have proof, I said, holding up my phone. Want to explain the transfers before or after I call the police? Meredith's society smile never wavered. Robert, she called out. We have a situation. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Robert appeared, looking almost bored. I told you to leave well enough alone, he said to me. Ethan, handle this. I waited for Ethan to defend me. To stand up to his parents. To prove that everything we'd built wasn't a lie. Instead, he reached for my phone. Give it to me, Riley. Please. Before this gets worse. Worse for who? I backed toward the door. The sick kids you stole from? Or your family's precious reputation? Both, Robert said quietly. And for you, if you don't start thinking very carefully about your next move. The threat hung in the air as I clutched my phone, surrounded by the family I'd almost joined. Wondering how I'd ever been naive enough to think I belonged here. The email from Boston General Hospital sat unopened in my inbox for 3 days. Chief resident position, starting immediately. My dream job, offering an escape from this nightmare. I stared at it in the hospital break room, my coffee growing cold. You should take it, Jenna said, reading over my shoulder. Get out while you can. My phone buzzed. Robert Caldwell. Third time today. I declined the call. It's not that simple. I pulled up the photos I'd taken of Meredith's files. Those kids deserve justice. And what about what you deserve? Jenna grabbed my phone, scrolling through recent texts from Ethan. He's choosing them. Every time. She wasn't wrong. Since the confrontation, Ethan had been sending mixed signals, apologetic messages followed by defensive accusations. Promises to fix things followed by silence. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number, meeting. Tonight. 8 p.m. Riverside Park. Come alone if you want the whole story. Sarah R. The auditor? Jenna frowned. The one Ethan was with in those photos? Before I could respond, the break room door opened. Meredith Caldwell stood there, looking oddly vulnerable in street clothes instead of her usual designer wear. Riley, she said softly. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. It's about Robert. Her hands trembled. There's something you don't know. Something Ethan doesn't even know. More lies? The truth. She pulled out a USB drive. Everything's here. The real fraud, the threats, why I had to play along. But Robert can never know I gave you this. I stared at the drive. Why should I believe you? Because in 20 minutes, Robert's going to offer you $5 million to disappear. And if you refuse. She swallowed hard. Well, let's just say the last person who threatened to expose him had a very unfortunate car accident. My pager went off, emergency in the ER. As I stood to leave, Meredith grabbed my arm. Whatever you decide, don't meet Sarah tonight. She works for Robert, not the foundation. It's a trap. I pulled away. Like mother, like daughter-in-law, right? Always playing both sides? No, she whispered. Like survivor to survivor. Make the smart choice, Riley. Some battles aren't worth dying for. She left the USB drive on the table. Through the break room window, I saw Robert's black SUV pulling into the hospital parking lot. 3 paths lay before me, Boston and safety, Sarah and answers, or Meredith's USB drive and whatever dangerous truth it held. The emergency pager buzzed again. For now, at least, I had an excuse to run. The contents of Meredith's USB drive glowed on my laptop screen at 3 a.m. Financial records, emails, surveillance photos, a digital paper trail leading straight to Robert Caldwell, not his wife. The charity fraud was just the tip of the iceberg. Behind it lay a network of shell companies, blackmail, and at least one suspicious death. My phone lit up. Ethan. Where are you? His voice was tight. Dad's looking for you. I bet he is. I minimized the screen showing Robert's offshore accounts. Did you know about Jennifer Martinez? Silence. Then, the foundation's former auditor? She died in a car crash last year. After threatening to expose your father's schemes. I pulled up her accident report. Brake failure. How convenient. Riley, please. Whatever you think you know. I know everything, Ethan. Your mother gave me proof. A sharp intake of breath. Mom did what? Someone knocked on my apartment door. I froze. Riley? Ethan's voice changed. Are you home? Another knock. Harder this time. Don't open it, Jenna whispered from the couch where she'd been helping me sort through documents. She already had her phone out, dialing 911. Who's there? I called out. Miss Emerson. Robert's voice, smooth as ever. We need to discuss your future. All of our futures. I grabbed my laptop and backup drive, retreating toward the bedroom. The police are on their way. No need for dramatics. I'm here to offer you a deal. $5 million, as promised. Plus a guaranteed residency at Mass General. All you have to do is hand over the drive and walk away. Ethan was still on the phone. Riley, whatever he's offering, don't trust him. I'm on my way. Stay where you are, I hissed. Your father's already here. The door handle jiggled. Then came the sound of a key in the lock. I had copies made weeks ago, Robert called out pleasantly. Standard business practice. You understand. Jenna grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the fire escape. Time to go. But I hesitated, staring at the laptop screen. Jennifer Martinez had tried to run, too. Look where that got her. 1 minute, Miss Emerson, Robert said as the door began to open. Then this becomes considerably less pleasant. I had 3 choices: run and spend my life looking over my shoulder, take the money and try to live with my conscience. Or stand and fight with evidence that might get me killed. Riley? Ethan's voice cracked. Whatever you're thinking, just stay alive. Please. The door swung open. Time to choose. I chose option 4, none of the above. Instead of running or surrendering, I hit send on the email I'd prepared, copying every major news outlet and law enforcement agency on the evidence. Then I walked straight to my apartment door and opened it. Robert Caldwell stood there, flanked by 2 men who definitely weren't his usual drivers. His smile didn't reach his eyes. That was incredibly stupid, he said softly. So was killing Jennifer Martinez. I held up my phone, showing the sent email. Everything's out now. Running won't help you anymore. His smile widened. Check your email again. My phone buzzed with notifications. Every single email had bounced back. Server errors. Connection failures. Impossible. Technology, Robert sighed. So unreliable these days. Especially on networks I control. The charity gala's crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead as security escorted me into the main ballroom. Guests in designer evening wear turned to stare. Meredith's face went white when she saw her husband's grip on my arm. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert announced, his voice carrying across the room. I'm afraid we have a situation. This young woman has been embezzling from the foundation. We've just discovered the evidence. The room erupted in whispers. I saw Ethan push through the crowd, horror on his face. That's a lie, I said, but Robert's next words drowned me out. We've already contacted the police. Such a shame. She had such promise as a doctor. Meredith stepped forward, her hands shaking. Robert, please. Not now, dear. His grip tightened on my arm. Sometimes we must make examples of people who betray our trust. I searched the crowd for a friendly face, anyone who might believe me. But these were all Caldwell loyalists, beneficiaries of Robert's power and money. Even Jenna hadn't made it past security with her evidence backup. Ethan finally reached us. Dad, stop this. I know the truth. Do you? Robert's voice was deadly quiet. About your mother's addiction? The accidents she caused? Who covered them up? Who protected this family while you played at being a lawyer? Ethan faltered. Meredith let out a small sob. You see, Riley, Robert continued, everyone has secrets they'd die to protect. The question is, are you willing to die for yours? Blue and red lights flashed outside. Police sirens wailed. Last chance, Robert whispered. Take the deal. Or watch everything you've worked for disappear. I looked at Ethan, silently begging him to help. He stared back, tears in his eyes, frozen in place by his father's revelations. The police were coming, but they weren't coming to save me. They were coming to arrest me for crimes I didn't commit, while the real criminal stood smugly beside me, holding all the cards. I'd never felt more alone. The handcuffs felt cold against my wrists, but not as cold as Robert's smile as the police led me through the ballroom. That's when Sarah Richardson, the blonde from the photos, walked in. "I wouldn't arrest her just yet," Sarah called out, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Not until you see what's on this." She held up a familiar USB drive. My heart stopped. It wasn't Meredith's, I'd destroyed that one. This was different. Robert's smile faltered. "Security. Already handled," Sarah said, nodding toward the entrance where Jenna stood with 2 FBI agents. "Your private security team has been replaced." The room went silent as Sarah connected her laptop to the projector. Emails, bank statements, and surveillance photos filled the screen, but these weren't the ones I'd found. These showed Robert, not Meredith, orchestrating everything. "You see," Sarah continued, "Jennifer Martinez wasn't just an auditor. She was my sister. And before you killed her, she made copies. Lots of copies." Ethan stepped forward, his face ashen. "The photos of us meeting. You planned this?" "We needed someone on the inside," Sarah said. "Someone Robert wouldn't suspect." Riley's investigation gave us the perfect cover to finish what Jennifer started. Robert lunged for the laptop, but the FBI agents were faster. As they read him his rights, Meredith collapsed into a chair, shaking. "I didn't know," she whispered. "About Jennifer. About any of it. He told me the accidents were my fault, that he was protecting me." "Mom," Ethan knelt beside her. "The prescriptions, the blackmail, it was all him?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "The police removed my handcuffs as Robert was led away." He paused beside me, his mask finally cracking. "You really think this ends here?" he hissed. "Money talks. Witnesses disappear. You of all people should know." "Actually," I cut him off, "I do know. That's why I made sure Jennifer's evidence went to every major news outlet 10 minutes ago. From Sarah's secure server, not yours." For the first time, real fear crossed his face. Ethan approached me slowly, looking lost. "Riley, I don't know what to say. All this time, I thought I was protecting you by working with Sarah, but I just made everything worse. You could have told me the truth." "I know. I was afraid, of him, of losing you, of everything falling apart." He reached for my hand. "But it fell apart anyway, didn't it?" I pulled away. "Yes. It did." As the FBI led Robert Caldwell away in handcuffs, I realized revenge wasn't what I'd really wanted. I'd wanted the truth. Now that I had it, I wasn't sure what to do with it. Or with the broken family it left behind. 6 months later, I stood in the hospital parking lot where Ethan and I first met, watching Meredith walk out of her weekly therapy session. She looked smaller now, more human without her designer armor. The media circus around Robert's trial had stripped away everyone's facades, leaving raw truth in its wake. "You didn't have to come," she said, stopping beside me. "I know." I handed her a coffee, black, no sugar, just like she'd always drunk it. "But I wanted to. Ethan told me you accepted the Boston position. Chief resident starts next month." I paused. "He also told me you're selling the mansion." She smiled faintly. "Too many ghosts. The money will go to Jennifer Martinez's foundation, the real one this time." We stood in comfortable silence, a first for us. The morning news had announced Robert's guilty plea. 20 years, no possibility of parole. "I never thanked you," Meredith said suddenly. "For seeing through him when I couldn't. Or wouldn't. I almost didn't. If Jenna hadn't sent those photos." "What?" I froze. "The photos of Ethan and Sarah. The anonymous package." Meredith frowned. "Jenna didn't send those." "I did." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. All this time, I'd thought Jenna had orchestrated everything to protect me. But it was Meredith, trying to save not just herself, but all of us. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth about Robert? Would you have believed me?" She touched her engagement ring, still worn, but on her right hand now. Sometimes we have to lose everything to see what was really there. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Coffee later? Just to talk. He misses you, Meredith said softly. I miss him too. But sometimes love isn't enough. And sometimes, she countered, it's exactly enough. Just not in the way we expected. I watched her walk away, stronger now in her vulnerability than she'd ever been in her perfection. My own reflection in the car window showed someone different too, someone who'd learned that revenge and justice aren't always the same thing. And that sometimes the truth sets everyone free, not just the ones we think deserve it. I texted Ethan back, coffee sounds good. But this time, let's start with the truth. After all, that's what Meredith had done for me, in her own complicated way. Sometimes the people we think are our enemies are actually showing us the path forward, even if that path leads somewhere we never expected to go. Or maybe, somewhere we were always meant to be.